chart that you can only look at the 9th grade because we don't test beyond the 9th grade. But again, scores are representative for a 3-year period of time, so it does give you some idea of how consistently a grade level would score. And the final chart I have is specific to the math content area. Again, set up the exact same way. And then just some conclusions that were made after reviewing all of the testing material from Riverside Publishing are as follows. In the majority of content areas tested, Westport Community Schools have a larger percentage of higher achieving students and about the same percentage of medium achieving students when compared nationally, with the bulk of our student population really still continuing to fall in that 4th, 5th, and 6th D9 range. So again, if you kind of think of a bell curve, we're right to the left and to the right of where that curve would peak. And historically, we've fallen right in that particular spot. So we haven't seen a lot of changes, but what it does show us is that our students continue to make significant yearly academic progress. At the elementary school, all of the grade levels tested scored above grade equivalent set levels. Standouts go to grade 3 students who achieved scores that fell above the 62nd percentile range in all of the content areas tested, and to grade 4 students for achieving scores above the 68th percentile range in all of the content areas tested. At the middle school, students in grades 6 and 8 exceeded grade equivalent expectations by 1 year in reading and math, with national rankings at or above the 60th percentile mark. And at the high school, in all 3 of the content areas tested, 9th grade scores exceeded grade equivalent expectations by more than 1 year, with rankings for all of those areas at the 60th percentile. And then just some general recommendations, again, that were made after we reviewed all of the testing information, would be to continue to administer nationally normed tests in the fall so that early diagnosis is possible. And doing the same thing with the COGATs for students in grades 1 and 3, really being able to look at the differences between achievement level and ability level adds a really important dimension when we're looking at academic profiles. Continue to integrate test-taking strategies into the delivery of everyday instruction. Certainly how we help students prepare for multiple choice types of assessments would be different than how we're helping them prepare for a long essay or open response types of assessments. And then continuing to incorporate the information from standardized testing into the classroom so that teachers have more information to help them with decisions and the delivery of curriculum. Incorporate teacher-developed action plans at each grade level to address classroom strategies as they relate to our tests. And I think one of the most important recommendations is making sure that we're continuing to give this information to parents and students. Even our youngest students certainly are able to identify strengths and weaknesses. And if we're giving parents that information too, they're able to offer realistic guidance, support, and I think it, again, just adds an important dimension to individual academic profiles. And that's it.
Thank you very much.
Okay, awesome.
What's the date roughly that they take the test? Is it late September or
late
September?
We start late September. It usually goes into about the 2nd week of October.
Okay. And when does the company report the results back?
We usually get them back sometime the end of November. So that's why we're able to still use those fall norms, and it really does help give us information for remediation, for extension work, and really help us plan for how best to get our students ready for MCAS assessments, all of that.
Through the chair. Mr. Ladd. The report sounded like we did very well, but just taking a quick glance at 09 and 10, it looks like we've gone down in almost every area about 3%.
And a lot of that does have to do with class size too.
That was my second part of the question.
Right. A few extra students in a class can certainly affect the overall percentage ranking that we get. There are some areas, again, going over the sub-tests that are part of a particular content area. There were some issues with computation that brought down our math scores just a bit. There were some issues with subtests in language that reflected a change in our test scores. But again, class size will really affect it to a much bigger degree than, say, a gap in a curriculum area or something.
Also, are all students across the board tested in all these areas?
Yes.
Even IEP students, everyone?
The only students that are not tested with this standardized program would be students that are not tested with the MCAS assessment, because we have determined that they are alternatively assessed. We use a portfolio format to get achievement information for those students. And that's probably almost less than 1% of the student population that we're testing. Yeah.
Is that standard at all schools, though, that they don't test IEP students that are on portfolio?
No, IEP students are tested.
No, you know, on portfolio.
Right. A portfolio
And that's,
student,
everyone
it's
does
been
that,
determined
correct?
they cannot take a traditional or standardized paper pencil test.
Okay.
If you were to include the information you get out of that would be considered invalid.
Okay.
In other words, it's more the structure of the test that doesn't allow you to measure what the student can and cannot do. That's why in the MCAS they allow them to use a different form of assessment.
Do they ever take it, though, just to see a benchmark on how they would do?
I don't think...
In some cases, they probably wouldn't be capable of
manipulating
the test.
Okay.
And even for the students that are on IEPs or are part of a 504 accommodation plan, we do make certain that all of the accommodations are available to them.
Okay.
And we have a way of tracking that, so we know which students were provided with accommodations, and we make sure that those same accommodations are what they receive for teacher assessments, for MCAS assessments. It really needs to be an across-the-board, everyday use of testing accommodations.
Okay, great.
Can you explain the difference between the language section of the test and the reading? And I'm only asking because I noticed the language is the one. Reading they do very well in. Language seems to be the test that there's been the most fluctuations in.
And actually the language test is broken up into 4 different subtests, and it focuses on spelling, punctuation, capitalization, usage, and expression. And we noticed that immediately when the scores came in. But again, a really good indication that we can use them diagnostically, because it really brought attention to the fact
and we
that...
have already implemented that into our curriculum.
And that was going to be my next question. So what are we doing to make sure that that gets resolved in some way?
And again, the best use of assessment is to inform our instruction. So actually, I think focusing on writing workshop models and focusing on depth of thinking in their comprehension in responding to reading and literature, we had really focused on the students' responses and to how well they communicate their ideas. And perhaps as we learned from this recent test, we have not been doing some of the skill and drill of grammar that we all have loved in our educations. So we
being sarcastic. Just point that out.
But we really have looked at these again. This is why these tests are so important to us, because some of the skills that our students need to